Okay, thank you for tuning in to watch the Qualifying Pathways Clinic. The idea behind this was to go through everything that you need to know if you're planning on competing at a higher level meet. So that might be provincials, regionals, or nationals. And the aim of this clinic is to go for the next 2 years. So this should cover up until Nationals 2026. And then after that, things should be a little bit more normal. So you can take what you learn from this clinic and it will just apply going forwards. And this is specific to BCPA lifters. So, what we'll do is go through the CPU calendar, just understand some of the reasons for the changes that happened recently. So, it got a bit interesting with the calendar and not consistent. We'll go over the qualifying pathways for all the different meets, including any upcoming exceptions, qualifying totals, BCPA specific requirements, and where you can go to find all this information. And any questions. Although, if you're watching this, it's because it's recorded, so you won't be able to ask your questions. So, starting in 2022, there was a new board on the CPU. They wanted to experiment with changing the timing of nationals. So, this was apparently based on member feedback. For quite a long time, people had been complaining about having nationals kind of in the winter. For a lot of other provinces, traveling to those provinces can be a bit sketchy with the snow and storms and things like that. So, what they wanted to do was try having nationals at the end of summer instead. So, you can see that up until the end of 2023, the calendar was what you'd consider normal, what it always used to be. And then to make way for nationals in September of 2024. In March 2024, there was a regionals again, so 6 months after the last regionals. And originally, this date of regionals was supposed to be in May, which is why BCPA Provincials 2024 was scheduled for March. So the athletes could do provincials, then go to regionals, and then nationals. But the CPU changed the date of regionals after BCPA had already got their venue for provincials. So anyway, Westerns and provincials were both in March, getting ready for September 2024 with nationals. And then there was kind of a weird calendar point where we weren't sure. Nationals hadn't happened in September yet, so the nationals the next year was scheduled for July. But I think at this point it was getting very confusing with qualifying for international teams. Provinces didn't really know what to expect from the calendar, so nationals no longer in July 2025. This has been moved to very end of February, very beginning of March in 2025. So now we have confirmation from the CPU that the calendar is basically going back to what it was. And if you have opted into emails and esports desk and you were a member a couple of months ago, I can't remember exactly when now, they did send out an email and it is on their social media about which meets you can do to qualify for international meets and what the exceptions are, etc. So this is trying to show with a calendar view for this year and the next 2 years what the qualifying pathways would be. And this is for your first nationals or regionals. So if you've never done a nationals or a regionals before, or you did a regionals over 2 years ago and never went to nationals. So the green lines show qualification pathways for first timers. And then the squiggly orange line kind of shows exceptions. So this gets a little bit easier to follow from 2025 and 2026. So if we take 2025 as an example, let's say you're aiming to do nationals in St. John's in 2026, which should be happening in the first quarter of the year. To do that, if that's your first nationals, you will need to make sure that you've done a regionals. So you're probably looking at, if you haven't done a regionals already, regionals in the fall of 2025. And then in order to do that regionals, you would need to compete at BCPA Provincials within 2 years. So if you're currently just planning out your pathway now, you'd probably want to do provincials next year, which we don't have a venue yet, but we would hope that it will occur in the May to June timeframe, just to give athletes ample time to compete at provincials, sign up for Westerns, do another prep for Westerns, and then do another prep and registration for nationals, etc. So trying to space it out so people aren't rushing through and having to sign up before they even know if they qualify. So this is a bit of an overview, but hopefully trying to figure out how to get to different meets will be a little bit clearer later on in this presentation. So now there are some exceptions in place, or there were some exceptions in place. So if this is your first nationals for PEI September 2024, you must have done regionals within 24 months. There's no exceptions to that. But the BCPA did have an exception in place to allow athletes to just go straight to Westerns 2024 and not do provincials, because, as I mentioned, the CPU calendar changed last minute. Our provincials was a week after Westerns. So we can't really make people do provincials before Westerns if provincials was after Westerns. So, that's already been and gone now, so you will know if you went to Westerns earlier this year. And then for nationals next year in Moose Jaw, this is at the very end of February, beginning of March. If you have not competed at nationals or regionals before, you must have a valid 2025 qualifying total and have done at least 2 IPF approved competitions. So you have to have done at least 2 competitions, so if they're properly sanctioned, following IPF rules. So things like competing in the WRPF, etc., don't count. Because, again, of the timings of this, there won't be another provincials before this nationals happens. BCPA has an exemption in place allowing athletes to skip provincials 2025, providing that they attend a mandatory nationals prep clinic. So this will be a live clinic. If you don't attend, you don't watch it, you won't be allowed to go to nationals. There will be no recordings of this clinic. And then for nationals in 2026, which I believe is at the beginning of the year, and I can't remember the dates, this will be in St. John's, Newfoundland. This will go back to basically a normal timeline. So you must have competed at provincials and then done Westerns or another regionals and then done nationals within 2 years between each of those competitions. And then if you're not looking at nationals yet, you're just planning on going to regionals. I already mentioned the exception for Westerns in March. For Westerns fall 2025, there will be no exceptions because we're planning on having a provincials sufficiently in advance of this Westerns. So there's basically no excuse for not either having done provincials this year, next year, in order to go to this Westerns or regionals. And then the same for 2026. There'll be no exceptions, and you must have competed at a provincials within the preceding 24 months of the date of those Westerns. Now, there are currently no bids in for Westerns in either 2025 or 2026, so we don't know when they will be or where they will be. And if you're looking to qualify for provincials, if you didn't do provincials just gone, you're looking to do provincials in 2025 or maybe even 2026. In the 24 months preceding the competition, you must obtain the qualifying standards equivalent to or greater than the CPU regional qualifying standard. And this is for the age category that you will be competing in. So you won't find any BCPA specific qualifying totals or qualifying standards anywhere. These are tied to the CPU regional qualifying standards, so you'll just need to go and look those up on the CPU website. And note that those change in 2025. For some weight classes or age categories, they will be a bit higher. And the reason we say for the age category you will be competing in is because we have a lot of members who are sub-juniors or juniors, and they might be in that age category this year, but if they're looking to compete next year at provincials or regionals or nationals, where the qualifying totals for the age category they will have aged out into is higher, they need to make sure that they're hitting the qualifying total for the age category they will be competing in at that higher level competition. So if you're a sub-junior now and you know that the next time you compete at provincials or regionals, you'll be a junior, you need to make sure that even while you're still a sub-junior, you're getting that junior qualifying total in order to have an eligible qualifying total for that meet. And obviously, only IPF sanctioned meets count for this. Again, like no WRPF or other federations will count towards getting your qualifying standards. And if you're looking to go to your first regionals, so regionals 2024 already happened, so this will be for 2025 or 2026. You need to make sure that in the 24 months preceding the competition, you have qualifying standards equivalent to or greater than the CPU regional qualifying standard, again, for the age category that you'll be competing in. Before your first regionals, you need to make sure you've competed at any CPU provincials in the 24 months before that. Now, this does say any CPU provincials, but I believe, and I'll have to double check this, but we are required to have our provincials be closed, which means only our athletes can compete at our provincials and like have it count in this pathway. So you will need to have competed at BCPA provincials. We will exempt this if we know an athlete has moved from another province to BC and done their previous provincials, but they haven't done BCs yet. That would still be okay because it says any CP provincials. And for regionals, you have to make sure that you complete your BCPA volunteer requirements, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail later on. And then similarly, qualifying for nationals, very similar to regionals, you just need to make sure that you've done a nationals qualifying total and that in the 24 months preceding nationals, you've competed at a regionals. So now that's a lot of information for people who are competing at nationals, regionals, or provincials for the first time. So if you've already done nationals before, what you must do is in the 24 months preceding the competition, get a qualifying total, and this can be done at any IPF approved competition. So it doesn't matter if it's a local meet to an international meet, as long as it's an IPF powerlifting meet, that's okay. That 24 months is strict. So if you know that the date of Nationals 2025, say, is starting on the 27th of February, can't remember if that's the correct date or not, but you will need to have made sure that you have a valid qualifying total for your age class, weight class, etc. 2 years before that. So if Nationals 2025 starts on the 27th of February, after the 27th of February 2023, you need to have got a qualifying total. So that is a strict 24 months. And you need to make sure that you've completed your BCPA volunteer requirements. So if you're not sure where to go to find the qualifying totals, you can find them on the CPU website. So that's canadianpowerliftingunion.com/qualifying standards. And you can see there are different links for the different types of qualifying totals. So whether you're equipped, unequipped, full power, bench press only. Underneath where that URL is in the slide, if you were to look at the CPU website now, you would see the 2025 qualifying totals. So if you're planning on competing at provincials, regionals, or nationals in 2025, make sure that you're looking at the right qualifying totals. And then when you open them up, you'll see a table like this, so you can easily look up your age category, your weight class, and make sure you've competed and obtained that total. So for weight class, let's say you're a junior lifter, and as a junior, you competed as a 93. You would need to make sure that the qualifying total matches the 93 kilo qualifying total. And then if you are competing as a junior again next year, you need to make sure that you're getting at least 675 for your total. If you're aging out into open, you need to make sure that you competed as a 93 and got a qualifying total of over 710. And then once you've got that qualifying total, it doesn't really matter if you registered to compete as an 83 or a 105. You need to have made sure that you got the qualifying total in the weight class that you competed in. So you obtained 710 as a 93. and that it matches the age category that you will be competing in. So this is the part that seems to trip everybody up, is the volunteer requirements. So whether it's your first regionals or nationals or you've been before, you must do at least one of the following to meet your requirements. So you can compete at or volunteer at the provincial championships within the 12 months preceding the CPU regional or higher event that they wish to compete in. So that's regionals or nationals. Or acted as a meet director for a sanctioned powerlifting or bench press competition within BC during the previous 12 months. Or assist in one BCPA run meet as an official or other volunteer role. It says as assigned by the meet director, but we typically just let people sign up for the spots that they want, and then we'll take attendance to verify that they showed up between the previous year's national championships and the upcoming national championships. Or, and this is particularly designed for people who maybe don't live in the Lower Mainland, they find it hard to get to a BCPA run meet. You can assist the BCPA or one of its committees with its tasks while not being a member of said board or committee. So what we will do is typically we'll come up with a few tasks, we'll put them on a sign up similar to when you volunteer at a meet, and you can go and pick an activity like an online volunteering task that you can do. And once you've completed that, we'll basically mark off that you have met your volunteer requirements. And you can't double dip for this. So let's say you're planning on going to regionals in the fall of 2025 and then nationals at the beginning of 2026, and all you do is compete at provincials, you don't do anything else. That would cover you and meet your requirement for the regionals in 2025, but then that's kind of voided then. That doesn't count again towards nationals, so you can't double dip these requirements. And just to clarify, a lot of people don't know what a BCPA run meet is. So this will be a meet that's ran by the BCPA Board of Directors. So you'll probably see one or two of their names on the BCPA calendar listed as the meet directors. And these are kind of the standard meets that you expect to see on the calendar every single year. So this will be Provincials, Winter Open, Summer Open, and Fall Classic. And these are because the BCPA money is funding the competition, and any profits are going back to the BCPA to keep us going, buy new equipment, improve electronics at meets, etc. Club run meets are organized by members or gyms or teams, and they get to keep any profit for themselves. And with them running their own meets, they should also have their own pool of volunteers, their own club members, gym members, etc. That should be the ones volunteering at that meet because they're the ones keeping the profit, which is why the volunteer requirement is for BCPA run meets. Additionally, we have a few committees. Some of these are up and running already. Some of these will be getting up and running. So if you're part of a committee, being on that committee and actually doing some work for that committee will count towards your volunteer requirements as well. And again, if you're not part of a committee or you haven't been able to get to a BCPA run meet to volunteer, you can do an online task. Now note that these are limited. We don't have an abundance of these tasks for everyone. So these are typically reserved for people who can't get to the Lower Mainland to volunteer at a meet. So they probably live in the interior, maybe somewhere on the island, just to provide a way for them to help out and volunteer. So to find all of the qualifying information, you can look at the BCPA website, you can look at the CPU website. There's a few different places to go on each website listed here. And in the past, I typically get a lot of emails or DMs or WhatsApp messages from people asking if they qualify. And what I would like is for, before anyone does that, is to actually take the time to look at the resources themselves. They are available on the website. And if you have a look at both, you're still confused, you don't understand, before you send a request to ask if you qualify, include as much information as possible. Without knowing your last 24 months of competition history, your volunteer experience history, if you even have a qualifying total, if you've done regionals or nationals before, etc., it's going to be hard for me to help you, and it's going to be a lot of back and forth finding that information out. So if you are still confused, give as much information up front to answer your question. And then I have also made these flowcharts, which will be finding their way to the BCPA website just to try and make it a little bit clearer. So you can follow the flowchart along whether you've done nationals before or not. And it kind of gives you, if you get redirected to kind of the orange or the red boxes, that's something that you need to make sure that you do before you can compete at the meet that you're following the flowchart for. So have these for nationals for the next few years, as well as regionals. So now, before the end of this presentation, just a few things to note for nationals, regionals, and provincials that are different to a local meet. There'll be no weight class changes 21 days out of these meets. If you don't make weight, you don't compete. Nationals and regionals require the elite membership. So when you renew your CPU membership after November 2023, I believe, you will get the option to choose elite or performance membership. And that will just basically, I think the difference there is the policies that you're bound by. So there should be information at esports desk when that comes to that. If you do try to register without the correct membership, you will be contacted, and you can change that with the CPU registrar. Now, the BCPA does have to check every single athlete's qualifying total, their volunteer requirements, and that they are following the pathway. Otherwise, the BCPA gets fined by the CPU. So this is normally one of the tasks that we make available for people to meet their volunteer requirements, is just going through and checking this, because when you have several hundred athletes registering from a province, this can take quite a long time. Provincials to regionals to nationals is considered like a stepping stone approach. You'll find the quality of competition, the amount of competition, the experience needed to compete and succeed at those levels will go up as you get higher up. So that's why different rules are in place at these different levels of competition. And volunteer requirements are in place because without volunteers, we wouldn't have any powerlifting in BC. So even the board of directors, including myself, running this organization, we all do for free in our spare time. All of the meets wouldn't happen if we didn't have volunteers. So adding volunteer requirements in is just a way of kind of safeguarding that we do get volunteers so we can have competitions in BC. And then some of the questions that came up when we ran this clinic live that I thought were a bit more interesting, I've added here just for discussion. So if someone's competed at Westerns and they don't have the national qualifying total for Nationals 2025 or onwards, can they achieve that at a local meet? And the answer is yes. You can get your qualifying totals at any IPF meet, but you do only have 24 months from the date that you did Westerns to do nationals, or you'll have to do Westerns again. So if you don't get the qualifying total and do nationals within 2 years, you have to kind of do that pathway again. So you'd probably be looking at doing provincials, regionals, and then nationals. And then for someone who recently competed at 2024 Westerns and does have the national qualifying total, how many nationals are they qualified for? So can they go to nationals 2024 and 2025? And how long are they good for until they need to compete at Westerns again? So if they did 2024 Westerns, the start date of that competition was the 7th of March, 2024. So they have until the 7th of March, 2026 to go to nationals with a valid qualifying total. So assuming they have the 2024 qualifying total, they can do nationals in PEI in September this year. If they already have the 2025 qualifying total, they can do nationals in Moose Jaw next year. And depending on the start date of nationals 2026, if it's before the 7th of March 2026, they can do that nationals as well. And if they don't go to a nationals within that time frame, then they would be looking at doing regionals again. If they do go to nationals, you technically never have to do regionals again. So that's it for this clinic. Hopefully that was helpful and made things a little bit clearer on how you can get to higher level meets. If you do have any questions, I do encourage you to go and look through the resources on the CPU website. The BCPA website is going to be getting an update as soon as I write things up and include the flowcharts from this clinic. But if you do have any questions, just make sure that you're giving as much information as possible and just being a little bit respectful of my time or the board's time, so we're not spending a lot of time looking up your own results. We'd prefer to be given all of that information up front. So thank you very much for watching.